Okay, welcome to this stream. I'm hoping that we're going to get a few visitors turning up today. So maybe Roy and Richard and maybe a couple of others. So I was hoping to get a banner loaded. I've made a nice little banner, but I'm not quite sure to do it in StreamYard yet. There's probably an obvious button to click somewhere, but I did try sharing the app that it was in. I had it cycling around on there, but I couldn't see the app. So anyway, excuses. Oh, lots of things over there, aren't there? Banners and all sorts. So I'm not on the screen, talking to myself at the moment, and anyone who might be tuning in. Hopefully we've got an exciting program for you. I can see there's no viewers at the moment, so I am talking to myself, unless you're watching me back on replay. We've got some discussion about how Arduinos can connect, and also a little bit about how some other hardware which Richard's been using is going to be used for signaling. So I'm going to send an invite to people. Let's just see if I can get anybody else on here. Bear with me one moment. I message all my friends. And of course, as soon as you try to do this sort of thing, your computer goes on and goes slow. I'll sing a little song, shall I? I'll talk about what I've been doing this morning with JMRI. I've had some discussions on the forum. Put some suggestions forward for enhancing the functionality of dispatcher and auto trains, and talk about a couple of the kind of problems I've been seeing with it. Nothing too serious, but there are things that are a little bit more. Here we have Roy. Yeah, a little bit more buggy than I would like sometimes, and Richard is coming on as well. So there we are. Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi.
Excellent.
Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear myself. Of course, I can hear myself. How you doing, Richard? I'm concerned for your well-being, my friend.
I'm a bit tired, but it was great to get out of the hospital yesterday.
Yeah.
And my shoulder is a bit painful, but where they put the pacemaker in. But the whole thing, the operation took about 50 minutes under local anesthetic.
That's amazing.
Was it a replacement pacemaker, Richard?
I'm sorry?
Was it a replacement?
I don't understand the question. What is the replacement?
Yeah, was it a new pacemaker or was it a replacement of the previous one?
Okay. It was a new pacemaker for two reasons. One, the old pacemakers, the battery was running out. It's been about 5 years. And second of all, what they wanted to do was put a third wire in it because the other one had 2 pacemakers. So it's easier to use it. So what they did was remove the old pacemaker, slip the third wire in, re-put the pacemaker in, then sent me back to my room. It took about 50 minutes.
It's amazing.
Anyway, you're looking well on it, so hopefully you'll be okay. No problem.
Yeah.
Very good.
I'm just a bit tired. That's all.
But we'll try not to stress you out too much.
But it was nice getting out of the hospital. My wife's food is a lot better than my hospital food.
Yeah.
So last night she made me some scallops, which I like since it's the end of the season for the scallops. And it was a lot better than the fish at the hospital, which they served them boiled water. So poached fish without any salt or butter or anything is not that good.
I'm just going to send an invitation for somebody from the forum to join us as well. He may not be able to see how to get in.
How do you actually get into you, John? I went onto the channel, your channel, but I couldn't see any how to.
Well, it should come up with a live. There should be. I think there's a tab for live streams, so you probably have to click on the tab to get into the live stream tab rather than the videos. Unless you see it come up as a. If you look under your subscribed list, so yeah, I mean you should see it come up as a live stream if you're subscribed. So
there's a subscribe.
If you're subscribed on YouTube to my YouTube channel.
I'm not.
Yeah, if you do that, then it will come up on there automatically.
Yeah, you've got to look on the videos.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So that's what I was actually. Yeah. I was actually going to get an email to see whether you'd actually started it yet.
I'm assuming that you're avid followers of my channel, you see, which I probably shouldn't assume too much.
Rabid baby followers of that.
I'm glad to have you on board for today, anyway. And
is the address always the URL that you sent me that I just used to log in? Is that
no, it's a different one each. Different one. No, different one each time. It's part of their security. Yeah, it's generated actively when you start the broadcast, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, first things first, I just wanted to check with yourself, Richard, because I know what we discussed last time. We were going to get you to talk about some stuff, and now that I've been saying, well, maybe we won't this time, because I wasn't thinking you were going to be up for it. And now you're here. I'm thinking, do you want to just say a couple of words about anything, or do you want to leave it till next time?
Well, I just want to say a couple words. I have to organize the things, the presentation in my head. So what I had wanted just to know is, I sort of start off with the hardware. I have to get my hardware working. My hardware is based on Digikais electronics, but that doesn't, vis-a-vis an Arduino or something, what you have to know is several things. I'd have to explain that the address space used by the switches and by the signals is the same address space. They're just at different addresses. And the way I have things set up, my switches are set up essentially addresses between 1 and 32. And my signals, my signals start off at address 33.
Yeah.
And the signals are all, so that's one thing. And
Sure.
that means I have to set it up, and I have to test this. What I do is test the signals to get make sure I have the addresses straight.
Yeah. Yeah.
That the LEDs work. And there are multiple aspects on the LEDs. Since I'm using 3 LEDs, it can be red, yellow, green, and red flashing, green flashing, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So once I've got my hardware set up, I implement JMRI.
Yeah.
And implementing JMRI involves, under SSL, the simple way is it involves protecting sensors down the track, and if they're occupied or not, and it also depends on the turnout position. So, for example, if either the turnout position or the sensor down the track is occupied, the signal should be red. And that I implement, that I can show how I've implemented that on my test track. It answering questions in JMRI. There are other things that can be done, but that's the simple thing, and it only uses 2 LEDs, but I'm using 3 LED signals. So what I have to look at is how is the 3rd LED, the yellow LED, positioned, and that seems to be handled by dispatcher. If the block n+1 is occupied, and if the first block, let me put it this way, I'm in block 0. If block 1 is not occupied, but block 2 is occupied, somehow, and that's what I want to resolve, the yellow light should go on.
Yeah, yeah. It all depends on what signaling system you choose when you implement it in JMRI. So you've got a lot.
I'm using the basic signaling system.
Yeah, I mean it then allows you varying amounts of control over what happens. So it is down to that what is that signaling system and how is that going to work for you when you add your mask. But I mean, primarily what you would have is a mask on a block boundary. So your first signal for block 0, looking ahead to the next block, has to be looking towards a signal. So each signal's. Sorry?
I think you're confusing 2 things there. I think you're confusing simple signal logic and masthead signal logic. Because the simple signal logic, I don't worry about boundaries. I just worry about switches and blocks. On the masked signal logic, I have to worry about boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to worry about boundaries actually on single masks either. You can do it without using the boundaries. But I'm just thinking in terms of the logic of your blocks, because if you're talking about a block being occupied, then logically it makes sense to have a signal protecting that block. So the signal is saying you can't go past this point because there's a train or something ahead in that next block. So that's why you would have a signal at the entrance to a block. That's how normal signaling practice is done. So when I talk about block boundaries, I'm simply saying the positioning of the signal is going to be looking, into the next block. Now, to get your mask going for different aspects, the thing is the signal looks to the next signal and it knows the next signal's aspect. And it does that automatically if you're using signal mask logic.
Okay, this is what I'm having to set up using SSL logic, not signal mask logic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can use either. It's not a problem to switch from one to the other.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'll take your word for it.
Well, I say it's not, but I mean, it's when you add you obviously have a certain amount of work to do to set it up, and I think you know, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. It would be a wrong move to start setting up something using simple signal logic, only to find later on it wasn't going to provide the things that you wanted, because you would then obviously have to do work to fix things. If you start out with the right thing and end up in the right place, then you're all happy. I mean, it really depends on whether the simple signal logic actually provides you with enough options for doing what you want to do.
Okay.
That's the thing. If it does, then that's fair enough. Yeah.
Okay. I started off using SSL for two reasons. One, it seemed to me simpler to get my hardware working under SSL than it was under signal mask logic.
Okay.
I haven't tested out what I think the way it should work under signal mask logic. The second, that was the main reason. And the second basic reason is when I looked at mask signal logic, it appeared to me to force the position of the signal masks. And with simple signal logic, it was up to me to take the responsibility to where I was going to put the signals.
Yeah, in mask logic, it kind of defaults to using its own path logic, and that can cause issues if things aren't quite right. But you can in signal mask logic, you can remove that as the option. And then it will allow you basically to just set up whatever blocks or turnouts or whatever you want to look towards, and you don't have to worry on its automatic defaults. It will do whatever you want exactly. If you want it to do just looking at the next block, that's all it will do. That, you know. That's what
I'm going to spend some time on now. Get the dispatcher working, which will imply something for Roy, because Roy asked last time what the forward and the reverse sensors, the internal forward and reverse sensors are. I want to see how they work, because you, John, you have them set up as the two Google little things.
Yeah. There could be arrows. There could be arrows showing actually. You know, I mean, that might be more helpful if you change the icons to arrows. I think I might have considered doing that. I just dumped them on the screen and left them there. So it's just.
Well, that's what I'm going to start off with. I know how to change sensors to whatever, I think.
Yeah.
Because I have what I did is implement a reset sensor, which says reset on my track diagram. And when I do that, it sets all the turnouts the way I want them meant to be set, and deactivates all the sensors. So it's just a matter, instead of putting the word reset, putting a couple of arrows in.
Yeah. I'm just wondering whether you're kind of jumping ahead of yourself a little bit too quick, because I would think, first of all, before you start even talking about dispatcher, you really want to just try to get your signals working a bit.
My signals work perfectly right now in terms of protecting switches and sensors.
Yeah.
What they don't work at is protecting the N and the N+1 blocks. And the reason I was looking at dispatcher, because that seems the only way to do. It doesn't appear that can be done in SSL. It appears it has to be done in dispatcher.
With signal mask logic, that's an interesting question. I mean, the two things aren't inside the logic somewhere. If you're wanting to look at the direction sensors to set your signals, and why would you do that? Well, the reason you do that is because the direction sensors get set up when the allocation happens. So if you're using dispatcher to allocate blocks ahead, either for manual running or for automatic running, then if the signals can't see the allocation, they don't know to prevent a train running through a block which might be allocated to another train. So that's
why dispatcher is the next chapter in what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I've tried playing with dispatcher with the automatic logic and the direction sensors and so on. I've found that sometimes it's actually easier to set it up manually. And the reason I'm saying that is because the automatic logic almost assumes you're running automatic trains, and it will be looking in a certain way for things to be working on. I'm talking using signal masts. But yeah, if you're using signal to signal logic, simple signal to signal logic, then maybe it's not so relevant. I mean, I'm not sure. I'd have to have a play with it. I haven't used dispatcher with simple signal logic. You could share your panel with us and show what's happening, and we can talk maybe through that. Do you have that on the same machine? Can you share your?
No.
Or is it no?
Not at all. It's on
No.
another computer.
Okay. Well, maybe this is something. Yeah. To talk to. Next time I'll have had a little think about that and a little play maybe, and because I can't think at the moment.
By next Wednesday, I'll have that sorted out.
Yeah. I'll do a little bit of thinking on that one because I'm not 100% sure of.
As I say, I just got out of the hospital yesterday afternoon.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure how I'd feel until I woke up this morning.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Richard, that's appreciated. Roy, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, at the moment, I've not done anything with any of the dispatcher or allocations or anything. I'm literally at the point whereby I'm just building the layout to get sensors on. Anything that would be working, I'm going to say semi-automatically, it will be done initially. What I've done is through the scripting. But what would be the sequence to go through to actually go to the next step to start using automation? Do I start on dispatcher? Do I start on, there's several different...
Okay. Well, the first thing I would do, is set up a very simple network in simulation. This could be a simple loop with a siding, or a simple loop with a siding on one end and a one-track fiddle yard on the other end. Once you've got that set up, you want to divide that into blocks. You would want to probably, I started off with simple signal logic because that's, as I say, that's where I got the hardware working first, but it's not necessary. So once you've got that set up, you'd want to divide it up into a bunch of blocks. I would have the siding and the main track one block, then a couple of other blocks around so I could have n and n+1 blocks. I would put one sensor per block in there, and I would make the turnouts individual blocks, but I would attach the turnouts to the main track in one section. And once I have that set up, I would surround one of the turnouts with I'll use simple signal logic with 4 signal heads. Using JMRI. Here, I can put this down. 1 second. There, that should be visible.
Yeah.
I would surround one of the turnouts with 4 signal heads. Let me put the signal heads up, right down the signal heads.
I think we can see where you're going, Richard. I'm not sure. Yeah.
It's probably too
There.
much at the moment for me to get my head round. I need to know
There
about
are my
signal
4
logic.
signal heads. So
Yeah.
the signal head here is the diverging track. The signal head here is the continuing track. And I would have one sensor placed over here. So either if the switch is thrown or the sensor indicates this is occupied, the signal head here would be red, and it would flip to red or green as a function.
I think Richard, you're not aware of the conversations Roy and myself have been having, because Roy's been sharing with me some stuff. He's already done that.
Okay.
So in some ways he's ahead of you in thinking, but I think I'm still not sure, Roy, if you're struggling with the concept somewhere, and I'm not sure which concept it is you're struggling with.
I'm struggling primarily with which step to go to next. Okay, I've got a layout. I'm particularly thinking, of course, at the moment on terms of my end-to-end. So consequently, I'm going to be having all the sensors that are giving things like the occupancy and the sensors for stopping and so on. Now,
Yeah. I mean, what I suggested to you was that you use virtual signals, not real signals at the moment, because you've got a lot of blocks and stuff, and you could set a panel up with virtual masts and watch it all just work. You don't have to have real signals attached. You don't have to have any of the worry of that.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
On my layout, on what I just showed you, half the signals are real, and the other 2 are virtual, since I'm too lazy to attach my real signals.
It will all work with virtual masts. I mean, when you can put your real masts in later on. I mean,
right. But the problem with that is you want to make sure that your address space is correct, and that's
well, I would say
that's going to create problems to get the real signals working.
You're saying about using virtual masts or whatever. A moment ago, you were talking about the SSL, which is the simple logic, I'm assuming.
Right.
And then we've also got the masts. Now, there's obviously
I'm not using
things there.
I'm just using
What's
SSL.
the very first one, the SSL? Is that what first came out?
Yes.
SSL.
Simple signal logic was earlier, yeah.
And then they came out with the masts.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, if I'm going to do something like that on my end-to-end, do I go for the simple logic first, or the SSL, or do I go for the mast logic immediately?
Right. The answer I've seen given a lot of times is, while simple signal logic sounds simple, it's actually not as simple as mass logic, and it's actually more complex to get more things done with simple signal logic later than it is with mass logic. There's more you can do in mass logic. It's actually designed better, and it's more comprehensive. So simple signal logic was an earlier thing within JMRI, and it's not to be confused just by the word simple.
Right, okay. So the thing is that the idea would be, from my point of view, to start with the mass logic. Now then, to use that mass logic in the first place, do I need to have anything else, such as the dispatchers or any of the other modules? Does anything have to be set up before you start using the mass logic?
Well, I mean, if you want the masts to be able to see block occupancy, then you need some kind of feedback from your blocks into JMRI to be able to see that. But that's the only thing at this point, I think.
Oh right, okay. So that's fine. I mean, those I will have. There's no problem about getting the information coming back. Now, at the moment, I'm still toying with the idea of, when I get the new layout starting to move, which is hopefully not going to be too long away, which is the N-gauge layout, that is looped, so I can do what Richard was saying, because it has got that capability already in it, as you know.
Yeah.
So that layout, we've already sort of looked at splitting it down into the groups and blocks and so on. I want to look at it a bit further for doing or setting a block as though it was a point, because that's one of the other areas I'm a little bit confused about, is whether a point should be a block in its own right.
It can be. I mean, it can be attached, say, to the line coming into the throat of the point. So you've got, that's where it diverges. You've got two tracks. Two tracks coming off here, one coming in here. If this one coming in is attached to the point as a block, then that's not a problem.
The thing is that, which I'm not sure of, if you're using mass logic sets things up at block boundaries.
Yeah, it's not necessary. It's not necessary to have a mask on a block boundary. And on points, in fact, if you right click on a point and do assign the mask, it won't allow you to do one for the throat. So it's a misstatement saying you have to have a mask on every block boundary. That isn't correct. What it is most block boundaries normally, when you think about the logic of it, would have a mask because it makes sense in terms of signaling for block boundary. But you don't have to have a block boundary at that point logically between the throat and the continuing track. It's down to how your track circuits need to work. I mean, if you've got a big junction, you might tie all your points into one block, or you might have a couple of them. I was talking to Roy about this, where you've got loops. You might want one loop carrying on while another one gets occupied.
I've made some modifications to my existing JMRI layout and actually incorporated something similar to this. Now, I mean, I could share the screen to show you what I've done and actually operate it.
It also depends on how you define the transits, because transits have to be continuous blocks. And if the point is within a block, I had some problems. I had to separate the points from the blocks and have them in the same sector, but put them into the same sector. Otherwise, I had a discontinuity and it just wouldn't see the block before.
Okay.
Well, that's guessing. I mean, I'm happy to talk about transits and how that all connects up, but prior to that, that you're down the road now. That's certainly something getting a bit more advanced than Roy, and I'd rather keep the conversation to something which is going to enable Roy to move forward. Richard, if you don't mind at the moment.
Okay. I would keep then it would be very simple. I would keep each point in its own block.
Yeah.
And that way the mass logic will see the block boundaries and put them automatically where they should be at the throat.
Is there anybody else on the channel at the moment?
There's one person viewing apparently, but they're not. I mean, the person who's viewing, you're very welcome to comment on chat, or if you'd like to come on stream, you'll be very welcome. I haven't seen any comments, so I can't see who it is.
What I was thinking is, if I start up my JMRI simulator now, I could show you what my thoughts were on the block occupancy and the settings.
Yeah, go ahead then, Roy. Yeah.
Shall I do that?
Yeah.
Right, let me just get the JMRI up and running.
I'll have to click on share, and then I'll have to allow it.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll sort that out in a second. I'll just get the panels up.
While you're doing that, I'll just talk a little minute so that people don't get bored if they're watching.
That's okay.
I'll just talk about something I discovered this morning, because I've been doing automation for a while, and I have a couple of buttons on my screen which do things like run the auto train script, which simulates trains running around the layout, so that because I'm not actually connected to the layout at the moment, for simulating it, I want to see my blocks being occupied. That auto train script does the job of that, and it does it very well.
Where do you hook in this script? It took me to what program?
I use Logic to fire. I've got an icon on the screen. If I click the icon, so I turn it on, I've got some logics which says on this icon, this sensor turning on, then activate this script. It's one of the logics, capabilities. You can do that, and it runs the script. Yeah.
Right, I've set up the sharing now, so I don't know whether you need to do it or.
Yeah, you're infinite tunnel. You're sharing your whole screen.
There.
Oh, somebody's ringing somebody.
Can you
That
see
was me.
the screen?
Excuse me on that. He's gone.
Okay.
My apologies.
Are you able to see the screen that I'm controlling?
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Right. The idea behind this is that it's an end-to-end, several points, as you can see, and if I click on any of those points, then it'll change them over. I've not got any of those automated at the moment. The section down here is actually for my simulator part, which is to simulate the local movements. Now then, what I've done is if I put it into edit mode, you can see the sections, how they're broken. That there is a very small section, as is that one there, is the whole of the small section there. Or actually, each one. Now, if you look at the point there, there's a point, the sensor either side of the point. Now, the sensor in the middle is the one that gets occupied when there's a simulated current sensor.
Why do you have the two? Why do you have the two sensors S1A3 and S1A4? Why do they exist?
When the loco is actually moving in the direction from right to left, yeah, then what happens is that sensor there is practically part of a station, and S3A1 is part of the station. The idea is the sensor in the center, if I click on that sensor, which is a simulated sensor at the moment, that becomes occupied. And that is simulating a current sensor. On the actual point itself, the idea is that when the loco approaches that and hits there, this will also go occupied. When this now gets activated, yeah, and then deactivated, well, that would go deactivated then that would go deactivated, and that would then deactivate that. So it actually puts that block, that's a block in its own right, yeah, and that block will be part of whatever the control code is. Again, we've got a section here, which is this section from there, from S1A3 to S1A2, is another section block. And the idea is that when the loco goes over that one first, it'll operate that one. The moment that operates, it'll set that first section there, saying that that section is occupied. That sensor would then go off as the loco goes past it. Now what happens is when the loco approaches this, it's used in two modes. It's used as a stopping or a pre-stop sensor, and as a clearing of this section. So what happens is that will become occupied, and at that point it's telling the loco to start to slow down. When that goes clear, that will go off, and a little while later we'll get that one coming on, and when it gets to this end stage there, that will come on, and it will remain on until the loco returns, in which case that'll go off. That would still stay on until it went through that one, on and off again, and then that would go off. If that makes sense.
I see what you're trying to do. It seems very complicated.
It's because you're using individual sensors rather than current sensors to detect, and it ends up detecting an actual position of something reflecting the light, from the sensor at a particular point, rather than the whole area being occupied.
That's correct. It's using that sensor there is effectively an instantaneous sensor insofar as when the loco goes over it, it's an infrared detector, so it picks up the information, from it. It's a fleeting contact, if you like. So in real terms, it does that and then goes off again. And in doing that, it then triggers this, which is a sensor that is, what's the word? It's a pseudo sensor. It's not a physical sensor on the layout. This is generated within the Arduino. But that information there, physically or electronically, goes back to JMRI to tell it that that sensor or that length of track now is occupied, as though it was a current sensor.
Yeah.
Now when the
Well,
loco
I
continues,
think one of the things which obviously with this type of activity can get very confusing very quickly if we're using the same terminology for different things. And I think if we focus on the terminology JMRI uses for its own internal stuff, then the word sensor means something specific in that. And so because we have a sensor table, and we have sensors, and those are logical bits of data which are supplied from your physical sensors or your pseudo sensor out in the world somewhere or whatever. But then in JMRI, a sensor then is the thing you can actually put an icon on the panel for and say when it's on or off. So if we say a sensor is on or off, I'd like to think I'm thinking of a JMRI sensor. And then if we're all thinking the same thing, we'd all be on the same hymn sheet. And if you're talking an Arduino sensor, pseudo, random, different thing, we're not talking the same thing. So just for clarity.
as far as JMRI is concerned, it is a sensor. It's a sensor that the JMRI sees it as a physical input.
Yeah. There's lots of things that can be sensors. I mean, something on the panel itself effectively can be a sensor, because when you click on it, it's sensing your input. So in a way, screen sensors. They're obviously in the sensor table. You then differentiate between internal sensors and external sensors. The external sensors have to have some kind of prefix which distinguishes which network they're working off, because you could have lots of different networks connected to JMRI. So if they're on LocoNet, for example, then they will have a prefix related to that. So S01 would be sensor 01, or LS01 would be LocoNet sensor 01. And then that you're talking about a LocoNet sensor, which is actually represented in JMRI, and you could put an icon on the panel for that. You could put that as a block occupancy sensor. You could put it as something you click on. I mean, but at least when that's on or off, that a LocoNet message will be generated one way or the other, spelling out that this has happened. So whichever network you're talking about, if it's an outgoing message, it could just be a DCC message. If it's an incoming message from a physical sensor, it's going to have some kind of designation in JMRI for where it's come from, and it's going to be in that sensor table. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you have two types of, I would say, external sensors. One are the infrared, which are essentially position sensors, and say the train will cut the sensor, the locomotive will cut the sensor. The sensor will do its thing, and the other, you have the occupancy sensors, which are sort of extended area things, and the two should not be confused. The way I would not confuse them on the diagram would be I'd have one sensor on the track itself, which would be the occupancy sensor, the block, and like S1A1 or etc. or S3A3. And then I would have the position sensors, which are infrared, which would be, say, SSA1 or SSA2, the way they will be indicated on the diagram. The problem with the occupancy sensors also is if you have, say, you're running the passenger train and you have lighting in the passenger train, the locomotive goes off the section, the sensor will still be active due to the lighting in the cars.
If you're using current sensors.
If you're using current sensors for which normally people do for occupancy sensors. The infrared sensors are usually position sensors.
Yeah, but Roy isn't using current sensors, so that's not a problem.
No, your occupancy sensors are not current sensors.
No.
Okay.
They are created, shall we say? They're programmable from the real sensors, from the actual sensors, i.e. S1, all the S series, S1, A3, A4, and so on. All the white dots on there are physical sensors that will be on the layout, and those will feed back. The number that it's given, which is the S1, A3, etc., those are the actual references to the input from the RR circuits tower controllers, which is fed back on LocoNet. So consequently, those mean something to me, if you like.
Okay.
I know it's probably a little bit confusing. This is my first attempt at anything with JMRI. Now, all this at the moment runs under the scripting logic. I mean, I can go through it and run one of the processors if it's of any interest. Generally, what I do is I put a throttle up. And you'll notice up here on the top right-hand corner at 3A4, that's the starting point for loco number 24. That's just effectively loco DC value 24. So we assign the loco logic to 24. Now then, here I'm going to select just the first one. This is the status of what is happening on that stretch of track when it first starts. So if I turn that on, it gives me the status. The thing here, the top, middle and bottom, is just which track to actually activate. If I now click on the top thing, the top button, I only have to do it momentarily because that triggers the actual script to run. That is now running, and it's saying waiting for a loco number 24 to be at sensor S3A4. If I now put a loco on there, you'll see that will start to move up. It now clears that sensor because the loco is moving along. Now then, this part down here corresponds effectively to what would happen with the physical operation of the loco dependent on speed. So the next thing that it's looking at in this particular case is for S1A2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trigger S1A2 in a normal speed mode. What that does now is it's waiting for S1A2. When S1A2 gets triggered, it starts the ramp down of speed, and you'll see it start to ramp down here. And then it waits for the stop sensor. So if I trigger that, it'll actually still do it on its own. The sensor's gone off, you can see the speed ramping down, and now it's waiting for the sensor, S1. Now it's triggered, that's triggered, it's now waiting for 9 seconds, just a random delay. And that's just for it to pause at that end. Now it's accelerating away again. So that clears, And now it's waiting, or it will be doing, for S3A3 here. Now, what you'll notice when I trigger this, S3A3 starts to drop its rate or drop its speed immediately to go to S3A4. So you'll see that the speed, when I click that, it starts to ramp down immediately. But what happens, it's now running at slow speed, waiting to get to S3A4. And now it's reached S3A4, it now does a 5-second delay, and then that's the end of the termination. Sequence terminated. However, you notice that it was taking a while or a period of time for that, once the sensor had triggered, for it to actually start to slow down. In this particular case now, if we re-trigger it, the loco starts speeding up again, and now we're waiting for S1A2. Now in this particular case, watch for S1A2, and in particular the speed, because it doesn't actually start to drop immediately, because it has now timed how long it took last time to actually get from there to there. So now we trigger that, it doesn't start ramping speed down until now. And now what happens is, you'll see the speed will hit 0, and virtually immediately we're at the stop sensor. Now then, that will now correct itself on the time speed again. It's coming up. We're now going to wait for S3A3. When we trigger the S3A3, we again get a delay before the speed starts to drop, because it knows now how long it took at that speed to get to that sensor. So now when I click that, the speed does not start to decay, and then it does. And that now times it to there, and immediately, oh, I forgot to trigger that, sorry. I should have done that. Anyway, the net result, it's now functioned. And that's really the top. And you can, if you want to, include the station probe. So then it goes from there into there, stops in the station, and then goes out and so on.
And you set this up as a demonstration of some of the capabilities of using scripting and JMRI, and it's a pretty complicated, comprehensive kind of thing you're doing. It's not everyone's cup of tea. I just want to say this: it's not everyone's cup of tea to use this as an approach. And so, Richard, what you'll probably think is, why on earth has Roy gone down this route? But it's actually partly to demonstrate it, as I understand it, in a club situation where you can, explain some of the things that are behind the scenes, what some of the capabilities are, and that type of thing, rather than maybe taking what might be a very, very simple approach, because you're using, bespoke hardware and that type of thing.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
Now, I'm using that approach as a starter. I don't know. 6 months from now, I don't know where I'll be. It all depends on what I want to do and what I want to understand. I'm using it as a starter to understand some of the basics of the signaling to build something like that. I cannot do it at my club because my club runs on analog things,
right?
And they're not and we cannot convert to digital because we have modules which go into expositions with other clubs, and that can be done on analogic, but it can't be done digitally, especially if we're dealing with international clubs and attaching the modules together. So in terms of having enough space to actually build that, I'm not sure if you wanted to build it, how much space for that little simple switching network take if you wanted to build it.
That end-to-end of mine.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, what was the question then, Richard?
The question is, if you wanted to build that switching network, How much space would it take up?
It's, well, you can possibly see it there. It's at the back.
Okay, well, about how much space does it take up?
It's 150 millimeters wide, yeah, and it's 2,500 millimeters long.
10,000. That's 10 meters.
2 meters.
Come up. What?
It's 200 and. I'm trying to make it work.
2.5 meters.
2.5 meters long.
Yeah.
Okay.
By 150 millimeters wide.
Okay.
It's that plank. It's that plank.
It's a plank. That's it there, with the tracks on it.
Okay. So 2.5 meters long and by 1.5 meters wide.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
150 millimeters. 15 centimeters.
The 3 tracks are wait. You have 3 tracks there.
Yeah.
And you can get your 3 tracks.
Clearly. Oh,
What gauge is that? N gauge, Roy?
No, that's 00.
That's 00. Right?
Yeah. Can you see it, Richard, at the back there?
Bring it forward to the screen, the camera.
Just a minute.
So let's have a look.
I'll just bring it partly there.
It's live entertainment, this, isn't it?
Yeah, I can see that.
It looks smaller in the background than it does up front. That's good. That's good.
That's part of the wiring behind, which we're in the process of doing.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a plank. It's a big plank.
Okay, but that's more than that looks to be about. You said 15 centimeters wide.
We've got a newcomer on the screen, about 6 foot by 6 inches.
Well, 6 foot is about 2 meters.
Hi, CSX Mad. Welcome.
Yeah,
it's.
Well, I've already shown John the logic that I'm working on, which the actual control board. So I would have forgotten where to put it. The interface that will be connected up to the Digitrax is there. Oops,
right.
And that's got the 2. At the moment, I'm just using 2 of the tower controls for RR circuits. All these are RF transceivers, and those connect, wirelessly to the layout. And the layout has those on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are the things that collect all the information off the layout and transceive it wirelessly through to the logic on the JMRI.
Okay.
So now you're none the clearer, hey?
One of my little things that I really get frustrated about is wires all over the place. Especially on larger layouts, you get hundreds of wires all over. You only need a simple issue in one of them, and it can ruin a whole sort of layout. So I'm a great believer in using wireless communications. And it's quite a big thing that's happening at the club, primarily with personal members, and we are looking at it on the club layout as well. To actually do a lot of wireless control, but they're actually coming across. I think I mentioned it the other day. We're doing a modular system, which is quite big, or is going to be quite big in OO. And they're talking about for signaling. They're talking about wireless control or wireless communications to all the different modules. So that all you've got connecting the modules together primarily is the track power. and 1 or 2 control signals, and that's it. You're not going to have lots and lots of wires going all over the place. But that's way down the line yet. That's, you know.
Yeah, because when I start looking at my signals, I have 4 wires per signal going to my control box.
Right.
So if I put 4 signals around the switch,
You've got 16 wires.
I've got 16 wires going to the control box. Plus, then the control box is wired to my command station.
Well, you can do all that with 2 Arduinos and an NRF 24L. Simple as that. But anyway, that's by and by.
Yeah.
There's many ways to skin. We shouldn't use expressions like that, should we? These days, right? Okay.
Give 10 people a project to do, and they'll come up with 10 different answers.
Yeah.
And all of them are valid. It all depends on what you're. I mean, primarily, my interest is not so much on the modelling aspect. As you can see, there's certainly no scenics on that layout there. There isn't going to be any scenics on my other layout, my loop layout, because that's not where my interest lies. My interest lies in the control systems. I've got a massive layout at the club that I can play with as far as all the scenics are concerned, but I'm more on the control side.
Yeah, I am also, but the scenery doesn't. Scenery just doesn't turn me on that much.
Exactly, same with me.
There are other people at the club where it does.
That's right. Well, that's it. You've got members of the club or different people in different disciplines who enjoy doing different things.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about model railways, isn't it?
Correct.
So it's always different things for different people to do. Yeah.
It is.
CSX Mad says hello all. So
hi.
You'll be welcome to join us, CSX Mad, if you wanted to come on live, but I understand it's not always something people want to do. We've talked a lot around different kinds of signal logic. I think next time we'll probably do that with Richard, look a little bit closer at simple signal logic and what you're talking about there.
Yeah, by that time I'll be starting on mass logic also to see what the differences are. One of the things I had to do, which Roy will find amusing, in order to figure out how the address system works on my black boxes, what I did was set up a little Arduino. What I did was set up a little breadboard with LEDs and resistors on it, and little wires, and moved it around to see which output at which address control which LED.
Did it do the job?
What?
Did it do the job for you though?
Yeah.
That's all that matters. So
I could understand. It showed me what was going on.
Yeah, that's the big bonus.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to do it till recently, but now I have some sort of an Arduino starter kit with lots of little buttons, different LEDs, different resistors. Because the only way I can get that material is off the internet.
They are excellent, those little kits that you can get, with various components in and so forth. It's a very good starter point.
I mean, I do understand there's a challenge with getting addressing right. I mean, because I haven't connected much to my layout in terms of physical hardware for signaling or anything yet, I have had to play with some bits of kit. I haven't done a lot of it. I have had a couple of signals working. Actually, not with JMRI. It was with RR automation software. But whichever the LocoNet message for a signal has to obviously go to some kind of decoder, which then puts out the right voltage on the right line. And each of the steps you take towards getting that to work, it's it's a process of following the instructions in a way, isn't it? Like a recipe. You have to go down. You know, I'm just talking in general terms for anybody who might be listening, who's no idea about it. You know.
Unfortunately, the instructions we tell you how to get to the addressing mode as you can understand them on the black boxes, which is why I had to use my breadboard to make sure the addresses were correct.
I'll mute you, Roy. I've muted Roy out for a minute.
Okay, and JMRI assumes something about the addresses, but the interface problem between the addressing and JMRI leaves a lot to be desired. It's just not there, and that's what drove me crazy. To make sure the addresses that my black boxes were sending were correct, to make sure that the little output screws of my black boxes had the addresses I thought they did, and then to make sure that JMRI was reading them correctly, which it wasn't. And for some reason, you have to do an inversion in JMRI, in the JMRI table. I don't understand why. I thought I did, but I don't. But you have to do it, and if you don't do it, it doesn't work.
Right.
And because I was getting things like what should be red came out as red and yellow and whatever.
In a lot of cases, a lot of logic to do with electronics is actually negative active. It looks for a low to be the state on, if you see what I mean. This is a standard that is normally applies to a lot of logic. That's what happens on the RR circuits. The active state is low.
Okay, so that means, what does JMRI expects the active state to be high or low?
Well, the active state, as far as an input is concerned, is whatever you set it to. So correct, like you say, in my case, I've set it all to be active high, so that when the sensor is occupied, or when the sensor gets active, I want the sensor in the JMRI to come on. But what that means is I have to invert it in the RR circuits, because that sees it as a high to low transition.
Oh, that's the same thing. That's the same problem I ran into.
Yeah, it's quite a common problem. Yeah, it's quite matching up the different logic. Approaches is the key thing to get past as the first barrier, really.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Well, I've managed to do that, and that works. Now
I mean, there could be more to it as well when you start talking about which way round you've got your points on your panel and which way round they activate in the real world, because I mean, as I found, when you're laying out your track on your panel, what you've got to be very careful of is rotating a piece of track round, because internally the logic will be thinking it is one way round, and you turn the thing around and it gets all of its logic backwards.
Well, I guess I'm lucky. Because
you can always find a way around it, because there's always a way of inverting these things, but until you figure out that that's what the problem is, it's
no, that's the problem. Anyway, I'm going to have to go. It's
okay, right.
We've been on for an hour or something.
We have, yeah.
So I'll speak to you again soon. Good luck, Richard. You're looking well, and you've lasted on.
Okay, so what's the setup? It's sort of every Wednesday, 2 p.m.
Well, every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Yeah. I might kind of diversify things a bit. I was expecting somebody else to turn up today, but they haven't shown up. So, but that people will have different interests, obviously, and I want to try to keep the. CSX Matt says bye, Roy. I'm sorry you can't see the chat. I must figure out a way for you guys to see the chat as well.
A quick question on your internet connections. I have fiber optics here at home for my internet. How about you guys?
Yeah, I've got fiber.
And you, Roy?
Sorry?
Do you have fiber for your internet connection?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Because when I go out to Normandy, and I'll be going out to Normandy at the end of May, middle of May, I'll have to see. I don't have fiber out there. I have ADSL.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we'll see how that
Yeah,
works.
yeah, might be okay.
Okay,
No.
then I'll stop
All right,
here.
Roy. Thanks.
Cheers for now.
Cheers.
Okay. Bye, Roy.
Uh,
Bye.
See you. I'm happy, Richard. If you and I want to carry on for a bit, we've got CSX Mad still on the channel, I believe, and somebody else as well, some anonymous person who is very welcome to pipe up and let us know you're there
Have the
in the
comment.
chat. Have you got chat up yet, Richard?
Have I got a what?
Chat. Have you got chat visible? Did you work that one out?
What is that?
What is chat? It should
It
you should
says
be able.
private chat.
Yeah. That, I think it's not private chat. It's comments rather
I
than
have
private.
comments is next to private chat.
Yeah. If you click on comments, I think you should see them.
Yeah, I click on comments. I see CX Mad.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Yep, that's it.
Should I click on that or?
No. Just watch them. That's people commenting on the channel. So
Oh,
if
well,
that'll come up there.
I see a hello all and about 6 foot
Yep.
6 inches.
Yeah, that's it. That's CSX Mad commenting. So it's his
Okay.
comments.
Well, if he's still listening, we're on the metric system.
I'm not, mate. I've never gone metric.
And to be very blunt about it, the English system, which you're using, does not exist anymore. It is defined in terms of the metric system.
Right.
An inch is defined exactly to be 2.54 centimeters.
And I'm not going out to drink however many points of litres it is in a pub. I'm going out for a pint.
Well, it all depends. Also, it all depends on gasoline, if it's an imperial gallon or not.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm old enough to remember that when I was a kid, waltzing around England at some point, I was down in Salisbury. Not only did we have pounds, but we had shillings and pence
Mm,
and
yeah.
guineas.
Oh, yeah.
And what was cool was prices were always in guineas and never in pounds. And you had to be very quick knowing how to divide by 20 and or 12 or whatever. And the cash registers were amusing to watch.
I remember decimalisation happening, but to be honest, I mean, I was too young to really appreciate much of money before that. So I to this day, I really don't get my head around how many half pences were in a nick. I have no idea. I mean, I'm talking American money as well. I don't know. Sixpence. Sixpence was that actually sixpence? There's threepenny bits.
Sixpence was half
a shilling and half a shilling and a crown.
Sixpence was a half a shilling. A crown didn't exist, but a half crown did exist as a coin.
Right.
A half crown was 2 and 6. 2 shillings 6 pence. So and there were four crowns to a pound, and 21 shillings to a guinea. So you also had to divide by 21 to convert from guineas into crowns.
People had to be very good at maths, but then I think people were taught at school back then. I mean, I don't know. I think it was all going pear-shaped when I was at school. I mean, just education was going down the pan, wasn't it? There we are.
Well, the metric system is simple.
Well, I mean, it is, but I'm just thinking in terms. One of the things that comes up with model railway stuff, trying to keep it on topic, is tonnages. If you want to talk about how many wagons you've got on your train and therefore how many tons it is, I mean, are you using long or short tons?
The difference is 10%.
And you spell it differently, and which one is
Yeah.
used by which country, and what language you're talking when somebody suddenly starts saying a ton, because they might be meaning something completely different from you. Yeah. If you're international and you get that wrong, you're in trouble, aren't you? Particularly if you're in shipping for large quantities of stuff.
Well, the other problem, going back to trains, is I used to order some models from England. I can't do it anymore. They're too expensive. Because since British exit happened, they stuck when things come in into France from England, they stick on a 20% value-added tax on top of the British price.
It's criminal.
Yeah.
Criminal. I was talking earlier, Roy. I was, just because I didn't finish my sentence fully, because Roy came back pretty quick. I was just saying about the automation button. I was mentioning discovered something. Because you can run automated trains with a script in simulation, so you're not actually got a train running around, but it will light your occupancy of your blocks going around. I've had a button to turn that script on, and then you get, for each train you run in Dispatcher auto trains, that you get a little window with each of the trains listed, which is great. But what I found recently was, I think there must have been a change in the software somewhere, if I terminated one of those auto trains, the script would bomb out. It would stop. So all trains would no longer be able to activate as they were moving. But so I was looking around for solutions and found that there's actually a sensor checked in the script for pausing the script if there's no active trains, which I hadn't noticed before. It's been in there since the beginning, but I was going through with a fine tooth comb trying to figure things out, and I suddenly realised if I have one of the sensors on the script, I have it on anyway for auto trains. The second sensor, one runs the script, the other one tells my signals if they're to be active for auto trains. When that other sensor is on, it means I'm just looking at that one with my auto train script, and it means that that there are actually auto trains running, and as soon as there are none because they've all terminated, then it turns that sensor off. But the script behind it, the auto train script now, doesn't actually stop running completely. It's just pause, waiting in the background for another auto train to be started. So as soon as I start another one, as long as I click on that icon to say I'm running an auto train again, it will then be there ready to run that, simulate that train going around again. So it's actually a very useful little feature built into that script, which I hadn't even realized was there before. So that's what I was going to say earlier. Now I've managed to get it out. So
what I started doing was this. If I can bring it up, this is a pure simulation on this computer. On the computer I'm working on. 1 second. Yard. Okay. Come on up. There, I have to get tools, panels, load panel, tracks, load.
do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, if I can bring it up, I'm just trying to figure. There.
Yeah.
Can you see it?
No, you need to click on share screen, I think.
Okay, 1 second. Let me move that over to my other screen.
You might need to share the application. I mean, you can either share the application or share the
where do I do
share
that?
the whole of your desktop. If you don't mind us seeing the whole of your desktop, just be careful what's on there.
Yeah, I have no pornography on here yet.
Good.
One never knows. Let's see now. How do I? Is there a share button someplace? There's the share
should
button.
be a share. Yeah.
Video share screen. Share screen, you would do share screen. Share there. That should be set up.
Okay, we've got it.
Right. So what I've been doing was setting that up.
Okay.
And see what happens now. I have other things to do before, but I can put multiple blocks around here. I can put 4 or 5 different blocks around this part of the thing.
No, if you move your cursor slowly when you're pointing, because it's disappearing on the stream, so
okay,
just move it very slowly.
Okay, 1 second. Options, edit mode. There. I
Okay.
put multiple blocks on here, so I can have I can have 2 trains chasing each other. Now the question that you had asked me last time, and I was essentially, if I have there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 5 tracks in the yard. Well, if I consider this to be my main track, there are 4 tracks in the yard.
Yeah.
And if 3 of them are occupied, will it go through the yard? Or if 2 of them are occupied, what happens? Or depending.
Yeah. With simple signal logic, you are limited to how many blocks you can look at, because that panel you get when you add a signal in simple signal, add your logic for simple signal logic, it gives you the fields to fill in on the screen, and that's all you've got.
Okay.
So whereas with maths you can choose as many as you want, so you may be hitting one of the limits of simple signal logic with having that many blocks that you might need to look at.
Well, I'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, you could use logic behind the scenes and set up a some kind of clever system to get around it in some way, or you may get lucky and just be all right, but you might be hitting a limit there.
No. Well, I was beginning to set that up to see how that works. There you can see my.
I mean,
there you can.
I mean, I one of the thoughts on that particular track layout, though. I mean, what you would want is, I mean, because you've just got a single track running around, which, I mean, you might have just one train running around and then going into one of the, quite often exhibition layouts do this, don't they? They have a train running around on the main visible loop through the visible part of the plan, and then the hidden sidings at the back of the staging sidings are where each train will then come into one of the tracks, and another different train will go out from a different track. So you get a variation at the front of the board for people, for the visitors to watch. I mean, that's what's in your mind. I mean, in a sense, the single track going around in that case would only have one train ever going round. And what you'd be wanting to control in this case would be the train exiting a track and a train going into a track. And that, in a way, is a lot simpler, because what you're doing is just giving a green signal to go and a red signal to stop, based on whether the points are set, and also based on whether that the single track going around is not occupied. If you're looking from within your yard out onto your single track in either direction, you've only got one block to look at, and that would include the points, I would suggest. So if any of the points are either side are occupied, or any of that single track going right the way around, that could be one big block. And then as soon as that's not occupied, that would free up your point to switch to a different track to allow a different train to come out. So it could be as simple as that. I mean, it depends what you're trying to achieve.
I have a train here.
Yeah.
And say there's several blocks over here. So say this block is unoccupied, and this block over here is occupied. So if I
Yeah,
flip
it's again. Yeah,
if I flip this switch, the train should be able to get out.
yeah,
But if it's into the unoccupied block here with a yellow signal,
yeah,
because the block after is occupied.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's. I mean, you if all your points one side are one block going out round that corner on the right side there to your next block.
Well,
So,
block
I mean, I find it easier to color the blocks. So, change the track coloring
right.
to
I haven't
represent.
set that. Yeah, I haven't
Yeah, I
set
mean,
that.
it just allows you to see block boundaries more easily when you've
Right.
colored it. And then you can kind of think about it.
Yeah.
But there's no reason for what I mean. Presumably the trains would run the same direction around this.
I was assuming they were all going clockwise.
Yeah, I mean you could obviously have them run anti-clockwise as well, or a mix of both. I mean there might be DMUs or EMUs or something which can go either way. You might want to do that, but I mean, that's all possible. It's
Yeah.
just down to what you want, really.
Right. And I have a reset button for my switches, so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can always. Yeah.
yeah,
That was the start of automating. I was learning how to put a command on a button.
yeah. I mean, I would definitely drop some icons on there for the sensors that are your
Oh yeah.
block sensors, so you can click on them and show things to be occupied,
Right.
and then join up your track based off the block occupancy you want.
Yeah.
Which bits of track are in which blocks. I mean,
Because
have you set up your block table?
no.
No.
I don't think I set up my block table.
So if you go into edit and right click on a track,
Yeah.
do that for a
This
moment.
is just the very beginning. I just
Yeah, yeah.
did something.
Just go into just go into edit mode and click on a track. Right click on a track for me, just for the test.
I'll go into edit mode there. Options, edit mode.
Yeah, just right click on any bit of track for me.
Yeah. There. Right click on
Yep.
there.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So
My block
no
table.
block set. Yeah. So if you go to edit, a quick dirty way of doing this, go to edit on that little list. Down on the pop-up list which has come up.
That's the way I.
There's edit. Yeah, edit.
Then what I can do is set up my blocks and sensors.
Yeah, I can't see the pop-up that's come up now. It's not showing on the screen,
No,
but
it's on the other.
can you select it and share it? Because I'd like people to see it.
There it is. Now you can see it.
Yeah, yeah. So you can actually at this point you can just literally type the block name in there. So if you want to call it, if you wanted to call it a lower block or something, you can type it in, click done.
Yeah, what I have to do is cut this into 2 blocks. For example, split track segment there. So I can get both. I can get multiple blocks.
Yeah, yeah.
But as I say, I did something just very, very quick and dirty.
Yeah, yeah.
And I put a turntable in there for the fun of it.
Yeah, can you just try something for me? Because I'm interested. If you on your ladder, your point ladder coming in top left, the first point you hit coming off the single track, that one. Yeah, if you right click on that.
Okay. The pop-up menu. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You've got on there set signal heads, haven't you? So let's just try that a second.
That's right. Okay, I'll bring that over.
I can't. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So now the options here.
You have 2. You have 4 options. You have the throat option, which would be a double head essentially, diverging and continuing. And then you have the options for the reverse direction, on the continuing track and on the divergent track. Is the way that's set up.
Yeah. This is just for showing the placement. When you can get the save mask, if you click on, have you got any have you got any signals actually set up yet?
No, not on here.
No.
This is, as I said, this is a completely clean thing. I haven't done much on it yet.
Yeah.
I did that the morning I went into the hospital.
Yeah, there's a thing about masts. I think when you start building the mast, it will show up. If you have heads, I'm a little confused, and I must admit, I'd love somebody who was an expert to come on here and take us through it. But if you have, the thing is, in my understanding, a signal mask can comprise of various signal heads, but when you're talking simple signal logic, you are talking signal heads, but not signal masts. But why?
That's correct. That's why you. That's why when I click on this turnout, I get set signal heads. You see 4 of them. For the trains, for the train coming from the for the train going from the right to the left, on the divergent and the continuing, and then you have to place 2 heads on the throat. One for the divergent and one for the continuing.
Which was let me just say that was how I started out doing things. And before I switched over to using masts, I found that difficult to get my head around, primarily because I could see this wasn't a British way of doing signaling, because in British signaling, you don't have multiple heads per se for showing routes. You have a feather indicator to indicate there's a different route, rather than having, which we talked about last time, there's so your aspects, you don't have a different set of aspects for a different route. So this kind of assumes that that's okay, doesn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the basic.
Tell you what happens really.
The basic logic for this is using an American system. So if you're familiar with that approach, that it is less confusing. Yeah. I think that's why choosing the right signaling system at the start is a great idea. If you go into signal masts and choose the types of system in there, then you're on to a good start, because it will start to represent what you're familiar with, rather than if you come at it and just use the basics, you're kind of leaving yourself to do the work later in terms of defining how it works, because these systems can be set up quite well within JMRI and do a lot of the work for you. So, yeah.
Well, when I was working with computers, the way I used to learn new computer systems, was to take a blank computer and install a system on it. And that teaches you a lot on how things work, which means what you're doing, I'm sort of applying the same thing here, whether it was, I was doing that, whether it was an IBM computer or a digital computer or Windows or Linux or whatever. I always took bare hardware and started from scratch. So this is basically what I'm building on over here. But as I say, I'm going to go after the signal math logic next week.
Well, come back next week. We'll have another talk and have a look at what you've managed to do, and I'm going to have a bit of a play in the meantime. I'm going to build myself a little dummy panel just to play with things, so I've got my head a bit more clear on things. So appreciate your time, Richard, and I don't know if CSX Bad's still on the channel, but
it's great to get out of the hospital and talk.
Yeah, and
My wife
to anyone,
doesn't know anything about trains, so it's a nice
no, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot that we've talked about today, which obviously, we've skated over quite a few things, but I think in future episodes, maybe we can kind of tease those out a bit more and get a bit more clarity on some things, because it can seem a bit daunting for people, and I think that's part of why I want to do this, is to try to encourage people to have a go.
It's very daunting. As I said, I have club members that are setting up networks, layouts at home. And I'm probably going to get them started by offering a bunch of little webinars or seminars or whatever on JMRI.
Hmm.
And there'll probably be some other members of the club. There are a bunch of kids in the club. A couple of them are bright, about 14 years old. And if they can set up a simple network and start simulating under JMRI, they can do it at home. The basic problem is I'm about the only, they all speak French, so we'll be using the French version of JMRI.
Well, you might have to make that yourself, unless it's been done already.
No, it exists. There's a French version.
Does it exist? That's fantastic.
Oh,
yeah.
If you Google,
I know there isn't. Yeah, there's international versions. Yeah.
Google JMRI French will come up with it. I have no idea
Cool.
what their vocabulary is, so it's we'll see what happens. Problem is, most of the forums are in English.
Yeah.
So, but that's their problem, and they can make do.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, great to see you again, Richard, and thanks, CSX Mad, if you're still there, and anyone else who may be on the channel. All the best for now. We'll catch up again next week. Do it all again.
Bye.
All right. Cheers. Bye.
Quick question. Next week, well, you'll send me before the session starts an email.
Yeah, if you haven't found me, I'll send you the link. Yeah, okay.
Send me the link.
No problem.
Okay.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.